Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Pastor Mike with New Hope Network. We're here to help you take your next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're with us today.
What's up, New Hope family? Welcome back to the Grow Podcast. My name is David. I am here as always with Pastor Mike. I guess I'm not always here. I've missed a couple, but you are always here.
I haven't missed any.
Can I? Well, it is your podcast. Am I using that phrase correctly? I am here as always with Pastor Mike. I've never been here without you, but I have missed two of the 41 episodes.
Yes.
We're on episode 41.
Episode 41.
But really, if I'm not here, I don't think they should count numerically.
No longer a young adult. Is this closing in on middle-aged podcast?
So you're saying I'm 34. Do I still count as a young adult?
To me, yes.
So here's the dark side of being in your early and mid 30s at the church. Young adults small groups are always listed as ages 19 or 18 to 29 or to 30. And it's a real dark day when you realize I am no longer considered a young adult by the young adults at the church. I think I've told you this story before. I don't think I've told it on the Grow Podcast. When my wife and I were in Oklahoma at our church there, one of the pastors asked us to come in for a meeting, and so we came in and had just this lovely conversation, and she let us know that she thought that we should lead the young adult small group that they wanted to start. And we were like, well, that's great. We're young adults. And right at the end of the meeting, she says, yeah, it's just, it's so great for the young adults to have an older couple that they can look up to and learn from. And it was a really dark moment in my life, Pastor Mike, when I realized, I thought I was going to be a young adult leading young adults, but
forever.
In fact, I am not a young adult. Episode 41. 41's coming up. Yeah. Closer and closer by the day for me. And you'll get there eventually, Pastor Mike. You'll hit 41 at some
someday.
Point. Yeah.
Now we talked on the last podcast about plans for 50.
We did.
But send in questions.
Yes. pastor.mike@newhopewilliston.com, unless you're like me and you think it's way more fun for Pastor Mike to not know the questions, in which case email them directly to me, David@newhopewilliston.com. That's DAVED for David. You can thank my parents for your confusion on how to spell my name. And every teacher I've ever had. And there's a lot of confusion. But you can send those questions to me. I would love to surprise Pastor Mike. And any, pastors in their mid-60s from Minnesota that might have been used as an example last week, if you have any deep theological questions.
You get so specific with that.
There was an episode of Home Improvement. Did you watch Home Improvement back in the 90s?
Yes, I did.
You seem like someone who would have enjoyed Home
Improvement. I didn't know you were old enough to
I was perfect age. Okay, As we already discussed, I'm no longer a young adult. Yeah. There was an episode of Home Improvement where Tim takes questions. I think it was when he had who's the this old house guy?
Bob Vila.
Bob Vila was his fake rival on the show, and so they took questions, and he came up with all these. He had plants calling in to ask impossible questions to Bob and questions he knew to him. So that's going to be my goal. I would like my dad, who I know listens every week, to send in a ridiculous theological question for Pastor Mike to try to answer on episode 50.
And I would counter that by saying, send me a question that would maybe embarrassing question about childhood from David.
I think at this point
we've done it all.
I think I'm past the embarrassment phase.
Send a story. That's good. All right, enough about your dad.
Yeah, let's talk. Yeah. Let's talk about my heavenly dad and his son and Easter. We're going to talk about Easter this week.
It is Easter week or Holy Week when this is being released anyway.
If you're listening when this goes live on Mondays, which by the way, if you haven't checked us out on YouTube yet, youtube.com/newhope here. Check out the video podcast there. Although we love all our audio listeners as well, but there's nothing like seeing Pastor Mike while he's talking.
I'm not so sure about that.
But yes, they go out every Monday morning, and so make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet to get alerted of that. But if you're listening the week that this came up, it's Easter week, Holy Week.
New Hope, we're gearing up for Easter. We're real excited about Easter weekend across all of our campuses, and we've got some really cool moments, I think. We're praying the Holy Spirit will just speak to people's lives, and looking forward to that.
And our last series, My Story Matters, just wrapped up this last weekend. So if you missed any of that series, really encourage you to just go check it out, again, on our YouTube channel or on Facebook or our website, newhopeyear.com. It was a really, really great series. But instead of kind of our normal deeper dive into the message, which I think I said last week is what we always do every single week. But this week, we're going to do something a little different. And you just kind of want to talk about Easter.
Well,
so bunnies and chocolate and baskets. No, I missed that. Okay.
In Christian circles, this is called, and I just used the phrase Holy Week, which doesn't mean a whole lot to, if you haven't grown up in those circles, and that's okay. Basically because this is the week that leads right up to the events of what we call MAUNDY Thursday, which we'll talk about in a minute, because that's such a weird name, it feels like.
Yes, it is.
And Good Friday, the Good Friday that Jesus died. Okay,
also
that's
kind
weird.
of a weird name, considering
Silent Saturday. We've got all these liturgical, traditional names. Silent Saturday.
It's kind of fitting that it happens right around the time of March Madness, where we have the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight and the Final Four.
It kind of fits.
Silent Saturday.
And then Resurrection Sunday.
Yep.
And we talk about those events, the Last Supper, the time on the cross, Jesus in the tomb, and Resurrection Sunday. And we often don't talk about the days leading up to that. And when you begin to connect, there's a progression of things, and we don't have time in this to go really deep into it, but I kind of want to talk through the events of that week, and we'll do a little bit of a Bible study, I guess, which we typically, it's not that we don't go into that, but a lot of times we're talking about building off of what happened on the weekend and connecting it with Scripture and how to help us grow. This is going to be less, this is your next step, and more, these are some incredible things for us to learn and understand, which is a great next step. We just tend not to go that way.
Well, let's start with day one. Do you have
day one?
Do you have a palm leaf for me?
A palm leaf, a palm branch.
Palm branch is what I said. Everybody here, Michael, I'm gonna need you to edit out when I said palm leaf and change that to palm branch, please.
Typically, Holy Week begins with Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday, and I'm gonna give us some scriptures with each one of these, and you can replay it and write these down so that you can go in and check these out. Matthew 21. Mark 11, Luke 19, John 12. Most of these days are recorded in all four Gospels in these events and in those 4 chapters and a few chapters afterwards. But
what I'll do, Pastor Mike, for every day we'll have the day and then the scripture verses that you want referenced in the podcast notes. I still want you to list them, but for those of you listening or watching, you can go to the podcast notes or the description on YouTube, and you can find all the scriptures Pastor Mike's talking about, so you can go read them for yourself.
So the big event on Palm Sunday, of course, is Jesus, what we call the Triumphal Entry into Jerusalem, where he sends 2 disciples ahead of him to find a donkey, and you can kind of read about those moments. And then he rides this donkey that had never been ridden before, which is a miracle in and of itself, through the crowds of people who greet him with palm branches and laying their coats on the ground and saying the word Hosanna. And this is actually a fulfillment of prophecy from Zechariah 9:9 that described this moment specifically. But what was so threatening to Rome and even to some of the Jewish leaders was how conquering generals and political leaders were greeted. And here's Jesus, who they didn't want to be either one of those.
Right.
But the crowd was thinking this was the moment he would overthrow both, because in their minds that's what the Messiah would
understanding
do.
Historically what was going on in Israel at the time. There had been multiple uprisings against Roman rule or oppression, or whatever word you want to use there. And so you can see how so easily both sides, like you're saying, the people were like, yes, this guy's going to get it done. We had this one failed and that one failed, but this one, and then similarly how the Romans would be like, another one. We've dealt with so many upheavals in this area. And
this was the Passover week, which the population of Jerusalem swelled from 200,000 to over 1 million people, if you can imagine. And it historically was a time of high tension, because this is when not just all of those who are spiritually faithful and the religious people, but some of the crazies would come too.
Yeah.
And all kinds of things would happen. So, the military was on high alert. This was a time when, people would try to rally the crowds. And it's happened multiple times before. So that now this happens. And everybody's going, oh, no, this is what's going to happen. And what does Jesus do? It says he goes through, he walks into the temple, looks around, and then leaves town. And actually it says he went to Bethany, which is about 2 miles away. And that's where he spent almost every night this week, most likely in the house of Lazarus and Mary and Martha. If you know the story of where Lazarus, that's where they lived, and Jesus raised him from the dead. Each one of these days has multiple kinds of points, but I want to draw out kind of one thing that connects it all together. And here's one of the things for this first day is it reminds us that everything Jesus did was not to draw attention to himself, but because he is ultimately Lord and is trying to bring everything back under his lordship. And we've talked about what that means, is trying to bring everything back under his design. So right here at the beginning of the week, there's a recognition of his lordship. But as the week progresses, we find out that God's definition of lordship is different than ours.
Yeah.
We think it's power and politics. But for him, it's love and sacrifice. And ultimately, that brings about his kingdom.
Yeah.
So that's day one.
Well, what do we got on day two?
Day two, the big thing that happens on day two is Jesus clears the temple. This is, one of some of people's favorite and most confusing moments. And again, Matthew 21, and we'll put the specific verses in there. Mark 11, Luke 19, and I think I've got it's John 12 in there. Jesus goes through the temple courts, and he sees everybody selling stuff. And kind of the history of this is, during the Passover time, or when people would make pilgrimages to the temple, they would. Part of going to the temple was to give sacrifices, sacrifices for sin, which was one of the big things for the Passover, sacrifices of worship and different things. But a lot of these people would travel a long distance. Yeah. So from Nazareth or Capernaum in the north down, which is today, a couple-hour drive, might have been for them a long trek. It was the equivalent to us, which is increasingly less of a big deal for us, of an international trip. I mean, it took some planning, it took some expense. And so to bring a lamb to sacrifice, often it was just too much. So they would it's kind of spawned an industry where people would bring money instead. They would sell the lamb or the sacrifices at home, and they would bring money and buy a sacrifice there, an equivalent sacrifice. And so all these entrepreneurs kind of got around this and went, we want to, we can get in on this kind of thing. And because during the Passover, there were so many people, the priests actually declared the temple courts to be bigger than they normally were. So instead of the normal kind of confines of the temple, they actually expanded out several blocks all the way around. So this is spilling out into the city. And the whole thing became about celebration and about consumerism and all of these things. And Jesus says, this is not the point of this time. This is not the point. He says, my house will be a house of prayer. So what's he do? He makes a whip. And then he doesn't say he actually whipped people. We don't know or not. And he tipped over stuff. And people say, Jesus got angry. Think about this, though. Have you ever tried to make a whip? How long did it take him? Have you ever tried to make rope?
I have not.
I've actually made rope before from little threads. It takes a stinking long
Sounds
time.
Very painstaking.
And so this is not just an impulse. Sure. This was a carefully thought through thing. And then at the end of the day, on his way out, he's hungry. He sees a fig tree and curses it. It's like, okay. And that's the end of day two.
I would love for you to elaborate on the cursing of the fig tree.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. We won't go super deep in. But day 2 is really helping us ask the question. Again, remember, it all starts with lordship.
Mm-hmm.
That's where this starts out. Is it about worship and relationship, or about, am I experiencing and doing the right things? So the whole thing, it's about worship and relationship, or is it about, I just need to experience, I need to have the right experience kinds of things. And that's what so many people, I'm going to do the right, I'm going to pay for this. I'm going to celebrate for this. And I want this all to be a great, experience. And that's what Easter and Christmas often is for people. Yeah. It's like, we're going to go to church and turn it into an experience. And Jesus is going, you're missing the point. Mm-hmm. You're missing the point. The fig tree connects into that a little bit, but we don't see that until the next day.
Well, let's jump into the next day.
Next day. Tuesday. I call it the day of Traps and Prophecies. And again, Matthew 21, Mark 11, Luke 20, John 12. And as we read this day, we see Jesus kind of in the temple courts, and the priests and the religious leaders, they set 4 traps for Jesus. In other words, they've got all these crowds around him. They're worried about him, and so they're trying to discredit him.
Yeah.
And so 4 traps, they question his authority, and he answers them with a question, and then 3 stories. The parable of the 2 sons, the parable of the tenants, the parable of the wedding banquet. Then they challenge his allegiance. So do you pay taxes to Caesar? And the whole hope there is he would say, yes, to Caesar, which they would say, see, religious people, he's not this. Or he would say, absolutely not. And he would say, see, Rome, you need to kill him. Mm-hmm. And he just answers them masterfully, like he always does. Then he tries to ridicule his belief in the resurrection, which he'll really mess them up in a few days after this when he comes back.
Yep.
And then I love, because the 4th one, they asked what the greatest commandment was, trying to, prove themselves and themselves superior. And what's he do? I mean, he answers in a way they never expected and should have expected, mm-hmm. because it's straight from the Old Testament law. The greatest commandment is love. Love the Lord your God, love your neighbor, and so he talks through this. And the result of this is, I know, talking to you and some people, this is some people's just favorite moment, because he looks at them and he says, you are blind guides and whitewashed tombstones. And then he ends the day on the Mount of Olives talking about the future destruction of Jerusalem, and then they walk by the fig tree and now it's dead. And there's day 2,
Day 3.
Or day 3.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Andreas Kostenberger, and I'm not sure where he's from.
Wow.
It sounds
that is quite the name.
Yeah. And Justin Taylor wrote a great kind of article about this called The Escalating Conflict. He said, what we get on day 3 is the real historical Jesus, fully in control, but he responds with grace and truth to traps on all sides. This is the Jesus who knows what he's doing, and he knows what is coming. And the point is, it's his lordship. We're seeing his lordship here, but we're seeing it act out. He's God. He could have wiped these people out. And he kind of did wipe them out verbally, but not completely. He just answered them, And here's where the fig tree comes in. His power is even over creation. Mm-hmm. And his point there, he goes back to talking about faith. You were designed to be lords and share in my authority. And you're missing what all this is about. The point of this day is, it's so easy for us to, in our faith, to drift into wrong things, with tragic results, and like these days, we see people in the name of Jesus drifting into nationalism, and it's tragic results, which the Pharisees and Sadducees, there's some of that happened there. We see them drifting into, making sure we protect the organization of the church or the country or whatever. Or let's just pick apart, minute details. And Jesus doesn't let any of that distract him. And even like with the fig tree, people drift into that these days. Well, if you just have faith, you say anything and it will happen. And that wasn't the point of that at all. And so the heart of faith is faith. You trust the one who can be trusted. That's day 3.
What do we have for day 4?
Day 4 is a long one. The Bible actually records nothing.
Oh.
And it's just Scripture silent. You won't find anything on day 4. There's no record of anything Jesus did. So the best we can tell is, you know what he probably did? He probably stayed home and hung out with friends. And I think there's a great point to that for us, is rest is necessary. Jesus knew what was coming.
Yeah.
The previous 3 days had been intense. And so what does he do? He rests, and he does something that recharges him, gets him ready for what's to come, and recovers from what's in the past. And it's just a great reminder for us that God created this cycle of rest and not to push so hard.
Yeah. So day 5?
Day 5 is what we call MAUNDY Thursday.
Who's Maundy?
MAUNDY Thursday. MAUNDY comes from the Latin word, or root word, madam, but it means commandment or mandate. Okay. And I probably slaughtered that Latin word pronunciation. But so on that Thursday, and part of why it came is because it was on that Thursday night, Jesus gave his disciples a new commandment. It was with a new covenant, which is why we use the word Maundy Thursday. It's a new mandate, a new covenant, a new commandment I give to you, he says in John 13, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You're also to love one another. So we tend to focus on, what happened that evening, the Last Supper and the eventual betrayal. But not that those aren't important, but I think an equally important part is Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. And that's really at the heart of this. And I think not everybody will like this, but some traditions get this right. In fact, some call it a sacrament. I wouldn't necessarily put it right there with communion, but reminding ourselves that, again, this all stems from lordship, but the lordship and the authority of the kingdom flows from love, and real love sacrifices and serves. Yeah. So we go back to Tuesday. What was Tuesday all about? It was all about power. Power, who's in control, who's right, and how does Jesus end the week before he goes to the cross? He washes dirty feet. And then they walk through the Passover meal, which the Last Supper is connected with that. And then that leads us in the last 3 days, which I wanted to focus on the first 5. And we could go deep into the last 3, but that's so much what we go into. So day 6 is the cross. It pays sin's debt and took sin's shame. We're actually going to talk about that on Easter around here for us. Saturday is the silence of Saturday. Sometimes, the best work and the most powerful work is done in times when we think God is silent. I think for us. Yeah. And Sunday on the 3rd day, which some people get confused, like Friday, Saturday, what? It's not 3 days. He says on the 3rd day, Jesus was resurrected and he conquered sin, hell, and the grave. But those 3 days flow out of the first 5, which is all about showing his lordship. He is Lord. He has the answers for life. There's no question that confuses him, but his definition of lordship and life is different than ours. And if you want what Jesus talked about in John chapter 10, life to the full starts with a loving relationship that serves. And that's ultimately what he did for us on the cross.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Pastor Mike. This was a cool podcast. I hope all of you enjoyed it as well. Like I think you said at the beginning, no specific homework this week. Is that right?
Maybe. We'll put the references in there, and I would encourage you to read through them, or pick up a reading guide for Easter week. And there's some great ones on YouVersion and others, and would suggest.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah. So, I'm like that kid in class when the teacher says there's going to be no homework, and then, or they say there's going to be homework and they forget, and then right before the bell rings, you say, "Teacher, you forgot to give us our homework assignment." So we do have some homework. So yeah, like I said earlier, all of those scriptures for days 1 through 5. Well, I guess there aren't any for day 4.
Nope.
Because it doesn't mention it.
Yeah. So that's a day off.
You get easy homework on that one. But all those scriptures will be listed in the podcast notes or the video description on YouTube. So go ahead and check those out. And just have a great Easter. We hope that you're going to be spending Easter with us here at New Hope, whether at one of our in-person locations or our online campus as well. But we would just love to worship with you and remember what Jesus did for us. It's I think you is this the one you call? Is this the Super Bowl of? What do you call it?
I call baptism kind of the Super Bowl of the faith.
But you say this is bigger than Christmas. That's what you say.
It's bigger than Christmas, which is saying something for me.
There's a piece of you that dies every time you say anything is bigger than Christmas. But this is just the moment, where for us as Christ followers. So we hope that you'll join us to worship on Easter. Thank you again, Pastor Mike, for being here. We will see you guys next time.